Hello, hello, and welcome to a new episode of Skeptics and Seekers. How did I do?
Fantastic. Are you asking me?
Yeah, or the
Okay.
audience, but I will never hear what they say. So
Yes, you will. They'll say so in the comments. They'll let you know.
I don't
All right.
have your radio voice, but
No, you have your
actually, I
radio
wish I had
voice.
I wish I had written something out. Like I feel like I should have my own different intro.
So, folks, what I did is I dumped Mac into the deep end today, and I said, okay, it's your show. Run us in. He was not prepared, but he was going to put this off, to be honest, indefinitely. He was never going to do it. so,
Yeah,
so give Mac
definitely.
a little bit of encouragement and tell him he did a good job. He did, truly, it wasn't disastrous. How bad could it be? You're
It
saying a lot of
wasn't the
you.
worst thing.
Of course, you
Yeah.
didn't. You didn't actually introduce me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
So
supposed to say, well, yeah, that's why I need a script.
people don't know
Uh,
who I am until you say so.
Well, I'm your co-host, Mac Attack, and I'm joined today by the host, David Johnson.
That's not really accurate. In fact, what you should say is you are the host,
I'm the
and you're
host.
yes, and you're joined by your co-host, David Johnson. Take some
All
ownership.
right.
We're
I'm
gonna.
trying to be humble.
We're,
Uh,
oh God. Look,
um,
introducing a show is no time to be humble.
to be humble.
That is the wrong time for that practice.
I wish I had more notice than like 30 seconds before we go
You've
live.
had weeks. You just haven't done it because you don't want to. But that's
Yeah,
fine because this
I
is how
really
it always works. I promise.
like working for
so
CNN, and they're like, okay, go say something on national TV.
yeah, well, you know what? If you were hired like as an intern to do it a month ago, and they tell you, okay, it's time, and you say, oh, give me some notice, they're not gonna. Sorry,
But
it doesn't work that
yeah,
way.
do they put interns on TV? I don't know. Maybe
Eh,
they do.
it could be that some of our best anchors were interns, and then the anchor wasn't there, and they said, "Yeah, you're about the right height for that chair. Just read the prompter," and they became the anchor. You would never
They
know.
they
Could be
always
how it
start off
works.
as weather people, like a weather girl or weather man, and then you work your way up to like eventually being an anchor and then having your own like show. They don't just throw you in and be like, "Hey, host a show."
I don't know. I think that's probably exactly the way it works sometimes. What do I know? I've never hosted a TV show. Um, so what we are hosting is an episode of Skeptics and Seekers, though, and it's nice to have you back, Mac. We had a great show without you last week, but it's going to be an even better show with you this week.
Yeah, I listened to it. I listened to it. It's about that guy Troy Black, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah,
Uh, and it was pretty short. Like without me, it was like what, 40 minutes? That was
yeah. It was
impressive.
it was pretty. Yeah, no, it was. Usually, I can run an hour and a half easily by myself, and but I've been trying to. You see, folks, when the show goes long, it's not because I have not reformed. Okay, everybody's got to get on board here. I I have been working on it. I'll tell you what else I'm working on. I'm working on not yelling into the microphone. Um, I do a lot of yelling. I realize that. I get very excitable, and you know, some things just really tick me off, and I get going. I am a professional presenter, believe it or not. I've been presenting professionally since I was a preteen. And I was pretty good at it then. I got better along the way. I do it professionally now as a part of my job. I do presentations and sometimes represent the company with presentations. I do presentations within the company. You know what I don't do? I don't stand around yelling when I get excited. I don't know. So when I was preaching for like forever, you know what I didn't do? I didn't yell. I wasn't a yeller. I wasn't that kind. I made my points uh, persuasively, powerfully, but you don't have to yell to do it. But something about this podcast format, it brings it out in me, and I want to. I don't want to do it. So I am going to stay calm today. Despite that, people can now see the guy on the screen who's going to be preaching us to us today. I don't even know his name. Do you know who this guy is just by the look of him, Mac?
I think his name is Jonathan Can.
Who?
I have never heard of him. I don't know. I honestly don't know where you get these guys from.
The
Like,
internet.
I, yeah, you can find all kinds of crazy things on the internet, kids. Um,
I
I don't know. I just maybe it's just because like I intentionally not maybe not intentionally, but just the parts I hang out, like I never get roped into these people. The algorithm on YouTube doesn't like give me recommendations
right. Well, look, do a
for these
show.
books.
Do a show on religion where you talk about sermons that people preach. I assure you, the YouTube algorithm will find you.
Oh, I do like
Right.
I do see, but like the algorithm is like it only gives you people that are in the same sphere. But sometimes like it'll throw you a curveball and show you some random guy from out there, and it'll be like, I don't know who that is. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think the
eh,
algorithm is that smart. I got to tell you, the algorithm sees you looking at something on religion, but the algorithm does not know one religion from another. It doesn't know one flavor of Christianity from another. So
well, it actually does I'll vouch for it, but it also gives me like atheist recommendations. So it'll be like, okay, here's da 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 da, and then there's Dawkins in the middle,
okay,
and
are you
then
trying to prove
the
my
other
point or
guys.
yours?
I'm just saying, like, it's just it's very it like out of 10 choices, it'll throw in like eight different things just to spice things up.
Well,
Like,
right, and some of the algorithm is sponsored links, and those sponsors, maybe somewhat adjacent to what you search for. But the other thing that you have to do to sharpen your algorithm is to search for specific things. So if I have someone on and I want to talk about spiritual gifts, I will specifically search for spiritual gifts. Well, you know what you're going to get when you search for
uh,
spiritual gifts? You're not going to get a lot of sane people talking about spiritual gifts.
you're
So,
gonna end up with Troy Black.
sure.
Um,
So,
yeah,
you know,
like yeah, like
I don't know who this guy is, but I'll tell you one of the factors that makes me choose a video for the show. By the way, folks, Mac is capable of choosing videos from the show. He just has not availed himself for
no,
the opportunity. So,
I realized that I was actually gonna volunteer a video this week, but then I realized because we missed last week, um, I just like once and for all do have a video actually, and it's about abortion because I feel like it's like high time
oh God,
that issue like is settled. And like that's a show I'd be happy to host.
oh
You know how
God.
you press the button and
Mm-hmm.
you press pause and then you're like, hey, let's talk about that. Like that I would be glad to do that because like I feel like that video, it's like only 10 minutes long, I believe, but it goes through every single abortion argument I have ever heard in my life. So that would be a good future show.
Fine,
Uh,
it's available to you. Let's do it next week. I look. I don't. I
And
say. Oh,
you don't have to like be like, hey, I gotta defend what she's saying. We can just talk about what the person is saying. Be like,
yeah.
what do you think about that?
Look,
And
there are plenty of sermons that come around where I like a lot of what they're saying. So it's not really a matter of that. It's a matter of whether it caught my interest and honestly whether they were a good speaker.
yeah,
Because
but here's the thing. Sorry,
mhm,
the person in the video is talking to kids, so that introduces a new element to it because she's asking kids questions, and the kids are responding,
mhm,
and that's very interesting. Like kids, what do kids think about abortion? So I just think it's a fascinating, controversial video because you can't even comment on it. And when it first came out, like it got downvoted. Like back when you could still see downvotes on YouTube videos,
mhm.
they had too many, so they had to turn off the comments. Uh, but yeah, for next week, that's what we're gonna do. So if you wanna listen to abortion talk, tune in next week.
It's way outside my comfort zone. I do an abortion show once every couple of years because I feel like it's topical and you have to. But I so hate doing abortion.
I
And so
also
Mac's
hate.
his first show is going to be to put me on my back foot. I'm not even gonna, just to make it even more fair and uncomfortable, I'm not gonna watch the video in advance. I
I
will
didn't
take it.
watch you. I didn't watch this video. I watched like the first 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, I can't keep watching. But the thing is, like, uh, but the thing is, with the abortion thing, it's not like you. It's not like a debate. It's not like I'm debating you, right?
Right, right.
It's we're playing the video for you to see for the first time and for the audience to see for the first time and for them to be like, isn't that what I say sometimes? Or maybe is that logical to say? Is that normal? Is that fine? Is that rational? Like things like that.
Yeah, no,
Not like,
it's fair game. Look, I'm not saying it's not fair game, and we should. I think we'll have an interesting conversation about it. I personally am uncomfortable with the topic, even though I have plenty of opinions about it.
you do have lots of opinions about it. Like
I
you post
do.
about it at least every week.
I No, that's not true.
That is
It's
totally
not
true.
true. It's not. I hate talking about abortion. I have enough opinions to make all sides angry at me at all times, and so um, that's cool. We will do some of that next week. It is topical. It is time, and maybe we'll even put out some tickets for the cheap seats for that one for people in the comment section to
I don't know about that, but
jump in. I mean, maybe we can just keep it on chat, and they can try to
yeah, keep it
distract
on
us
chat.
with their chat.
Yeah.
And the thing about the chat is that it can never distract me because I can't read it while I'm doing the show anyway. So I invite people to do all kinds of spam in the chat because I don't give a damn. I never see it. It's the other guy who
It's
gets
always
thrown by
no,
it.
but because it's always one way. They're always saying stuff to me. Like I'll say something, and then I'll take a look at the chat and be like, "Oh, you said this. Maybe what you probably meant the opposite." Like I'll say something, and someone will take it as the opposite of what I meant,
I
and then I feel
I
like,
I promise when you're doing these shows, you will get good at filtering the chat while you're talking, and it'll be something you see out of the corner of your eye. You don't have to acknowledge everything that comes over.
yeah, yeah,
Whether
yeah. I know
whether you like
it's a
the
fault.
guy or not, T Jump is really good at managing his chat. That's
Teach them.
Yeah, T Jump. Don't worry about it if you don't know. That's
Okay.
fine. Look, so we're gonna do a thing, folks. We haven't talked in a couple of weeks. All right. And so we're just catching up a little bit. In fact, if we had had more time, it'll be the after show. I would love to talk to Mac about some stuff from the board over the last couple of weeks.
Oh
Um,
man. Yeah.
yeah, maybe some of that we'll see. But this show, I think it's 39 minutes long, and so we've already taken up enough of your time. I am going to go through long swaths of this, especially the second part of it, mostly uncommented, um, because this is a lot of this is just very uncomfortable for me too. This stuff about sexuality is uncomfortable for me to talk about. I'm a 54. Sorry, I forgot my age. I'm a 54-year-old black man raised in the Christian South, and we don't talk about sex. It makes us queasy because we're emotionally immature. So I've got plenty of that. Whether you knew that about me or not, well, now you know. I don't. I find this to be uncomfortable too. I also find a lot of BSC here. Get ready, it's coming. But mostly, I mean, I've had this thing in my queue for months. This guy is a really good speaker. I love good presenters, and I don't really care what they're saying because presentations have been a part of my life since I was a child, literally. And so he's good at what he does, and I've never done one with him in it. I might try to find some more of his stuff in the future, but some of this is way out there, folks. It's very topical. Uh, it's mostly about trans stuff, but other stuff as well. And that is another one of those topics where I get a little bit uncomfortable talking about, partly because I don't even know all of my own mind on it. It's, there are some things that I'm pretty sure about, but not all of it. Um, so, this is an opportunity to anger both sides, and it's just an opportunity for us to maybe steel man some bad arguments and maybe laugh at some stupid ones. And let's see where it goes. 39 minutes.
Would you play it at 1.5 speed, if that's
I
okay?
I I could probably figure out how to do that, but I think the most likely outcome is that I would mess it up.
It's
So,
by the settings. But it's on YouTube.
right,
I think it's, yeah, you see that HD, the thing. Yeah. The next one.
this
There we go.
this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Playback speed
Okay, that's
one
normal
1.5 or
1.5.
slow motion.
Okay, yeah, I mean you want 1.5. How do you like? Anyway, let's see. Okay, so we might get through this, but if it starts getting hard to understand,
If it sounds like a chipmunk, we can go back to normal. Yeah.
I'll go back. I, as a content creator, I'm one of those people who likes to respect the speed at which it was recorded because the person has his dramatic pauses. He may speak slowly on purpose. That's how he conveys his points. His points. It's how he emotes. And so I try to take all of that because that's a part of the communication. It's part of the craft of speaking. And so,
Okay.
but
If
that
it if
said,
it's I mean, yeah.
well, but
Okay.
this is kind of batshit, and so we might want to go through fast anyway. But
Uh,
he's a good speaker, and if it's starting to take away from the things that make him good, I'll go back in and slow it down. Here we go.
Sure. Yeah. Here you go. Oh,
That's
can't
already
even
too
hear.
fast.
It's already.
Let's
I can't even hear him. By the way.
yeah. Okay.
Um,
I don't know.
Technical difficulties.
What did I
Just
do with the
yeah.
playback?
Just click
Okay.
playback speed normal. Um, yeah.
All right.
Wow. Look at those book covers. Look at that.
All right. Can you hear him?
Um, no. So if you press play,
Uh huh.
no, I can't hear him. I couldn't. I can't hear him at all.
Okay. I
And
know
if
why.
you
I
can,
know why you can't hear him. That would be my fault. I didn't click this button right there. Uh, okay. Now then, you will be able to hear him. You have not missed anything so far. We're gonna, try to get past his
At
book
McDonald's.
sales.
So you can't save anybody with a Big Mac. So I praise that you give it to other people. Last quick
can't
thing
save anyone.
is you're going to have special resources. You cannot, there's one
Gonna
special resource you cannot,
bring his
that's not
volume down
nowhere
a
else,
little
not
bit.
Amazon. It's the return, it's actually the Josiah Manifesto, which just came out, the uncensored 8 DVD
Yeah, I
album. You'll
don't care.
reveal, it'll show you
Let's see.
prophetic mysteries in the Josiah Manifesto,
Oh
but
no!
also reveals something I have never
You
revealed
skipped
outside
the
of my
best part.
congregation. How one of the mysteries in the book actually foretold what is happening in Israel right now and
Okay.
down to
Well,
the.
I'm
Let's.
Are
Are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready. We
All
we
right.
don't have time
What
for
I'm going to open up today is the mystery that lies behind everything that is taking place in America, Western civilization, people around you, the transformation of our culture. In many ways, it's going to explain many things that you're dealing with because you're all dealing with it. And is it possible that what the Bible speaks about as the gods, the false gods, are not just mythology, but that there's something behind them? And what if these spirits, these things are in the world today? What if we're dealing with them? What if they lie behind the changes in our culture? What's happening to our children? What's happening to our families? And is there hope? And what is God saying? That is why I wrote The Return of the Gods. And that is what, and Pastor Dwayne wanted me to share, very importantly, this, because it's for now. And
Okay, so Return of the Gods. Is he saying there are multiple gods? Is he using the word kind of generically, as in powerful spirit beings? Um, I'm not sure I
Well,
understand his use of gods throughout
as
this
I
entire video.
understand him, it's the second thing you said. He's not using it as like multiple like polytheism. He's mostly like again, like if we go back to his book titles, they're clickbaity. But like he's referring to like evil spirits pretty much, but he's calling them gods.
So, in the same way that Paul talks about the devil as the god of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Except
yeah.
I think that Paul meant God. So,
No,
yeah, I know
even
we have
in
argued about this on the show. People can go back
the
and
original
listen to it.
language, you gotta go back to the original language if you want to know
Mhm.
that you're wrong. But yeah,
Well, I don't know. I don't want to know that I'm wrong, and so I'm not going to go back to the original languages. By the way, I did go to the original languages back in
no.
my life. I learned Greek enough to be able to read a Greek New Testament so that I could go back to the original languages. You know what? That doesn't even get you back to the original language, truth be told. So,
How's okay? Well, don't not
uh,
to rabbit trail, but
well, Jesus didn't speak Greek. So Greek is even a
and then you say that.
translation of stuff. So,
Uh, how do you know Jesus didn't speak Greek
I don't
when he
know.
had like disciples who had Greek names like Andrew and Philip? Uh, those are Greek names.
Yeah, that's a great after show topic for a show 2 years from now. So
Okay,
we're gonna,
okay.
yeah, we can put that on the board. But I do kind of think that there is a type of polytheism here, but I also don't know that this guy would say that he's a polytheist. However, he is using the word gods very freely, and so I would say that, when you accuse someone of polytheism, they could be using gods in the same way.
Well,
Uh,
polytheism means that you worship the gods. Um, uh, whereas like monotheism is like we worship only one God. But there's no restriction on recognizing that there are other beings
well,
that
right,
are
like henotheism, our God is the God above all other gods. It doesn't say that there are no other gods. It just says our God is the chief God.
not that there's other god as in the so like here's why like the whole Apostles' Creed is important. Is that when Christians talk about the Trinity, for example, we're not saying that when we say there's another like God, we're not saying that there's a different God in Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It's that there is one God of the same substance. Substance is an inadequate human term to describe what essence is. But the point is like, I what you're saying is like if someone says gods, maybe they mean there's another god out there, a rival god, and they're also like trying to vie for superiority. And in defense of Mr. Jonathan, I don't think that's what he means. But again, I didn't watch the full video,
Okay.
but I
Well,
doubt that that's what he means.
well,
Yeah.
I think that there is room for talk, for instance, of greater God, the one that you call God, and then lesser gods, uh, what some in some cultures might call demigods. Um, because it I don't know how you would use the word gods without thinking in terms of demigods. Gods that that are graded on a curve. Those are the minor gods versus the one true God. Having a one true God doesn't mean that there are no minor gods.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't also mean like the other minor gods are like independent or like self-sufficient or anything like that.
Right. So they're part of a spirit world, but we could also call that a God's world.
It's
If
all of it is God's world.
Well, no, I mean a world of gods. These
Oh,
spirits, right? I mean it's a world of demigods or lesser gods. The fact that we call them spirits and not gods is just a accident of language.
It's it's uh
This guy is calling them
it's a
gods.
preference. He's calling, but like the Bible also calls them gods, like in places like Psalm 82.
Right.
Um, and so it's like it's not that he's doing anything wrong. It's just that maybe he's not like caught up, I guess. But he's also like he's just I guess he's just going by the minority view. He might confuse someone, let's say that,
Right. And
just
that's
by the
fine.
terminology. Yeah.
And when I was a Christian, I'm just trying to think back of what I would have thought on that. I my thinking was there was one God in substance only, and that there were no demigods. You know, Baal was not a god. He was not anything. He was a myth. He was a made up thing. And I think you would say no, Baal was real.
No, I would say the same thing. I would say, yeah, he's a made up god. Same with Moloch and all the other Canaanite gods and Zeus and whatever. But like the way the Bible describes it is that behind these deities that uh, influence people, like this demonic influence is behind them. So in a sense, the idol is nothing, but also it is kind of something because
So it does represent something
it's,
that could be considered a demigod.
it might. Well, either
And
way,
for
like
me, I
if you're
didn't believe
worshiping,
that. I didn't believe that demons. First of all, I wouldn't have considered demons as any kind of gods at all. They were just,
well,
creatures of
they're
another
not
substance
God.
like us.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't consider them gods even generically. They're just like us. It's like calling us gods to ants. We're not the gods of ants.
Well,
We're just taxonomically higher.
it's like, all right, like I hate to like beat on this drum too much, but like the word used in Hebrew for uh beings, like divine beings, it's
Hmm.
Elohim, and that word can be used like it can be translated as gods or spirits or or disembodied creature. Like a creature is not
Right.
like part of the physical world, but like
And I tend to
that's
think of that as just superstition. I tend to think of that as just raw rank superstition. And it's hard to
sure,
know what I
but like
used to think when I was much younger. But certainly today, when someone's talking about gods or spirits or whatever they're talking about, I think you should take uh, some Valium.
yeah, but like
That's what I think.
here's the point. The point isn't like to get you to like believe it if you don't believe it. Uh it's just so you understand what the person is saying, or rather what the Bible is saying when it talks about these things. It's not saying that there's other demigods in the sense of they're like trying to I guess like they're not the same as God. They're
Okay,
not of
well
the same
let's listen
substance.
to this show because I think he is talking demigods. I think he is talking that. But
Maybe. Okay.
let's find. I mean, it's been a while since I've listened to this whole thing all at once. So let's. I just wanted to kind of have a little bit of discussion around that, and that might or might not become important later on.
It's not only going to reveal, but it's to arm you and strengthen you and empower you. And this is because it affects every one of you. If you're in a fight and you don't know what you're fighting, your chances are you're not going to win. Or if you don't know the power you have. Now, if you came here this morning to hear a politically correct message, you came to the wrong place, the wrong service, and the wrong speaker. I'm not here to share political correctness. I'm here to share truth, because that's the only thing that's going to matter in the end.
I just really hate this false dichotomy between it's either politically correct or it's true. You can say true things
Yeah.
without being a dick. And somehow
Well,
I just think that there's a certain brand of Christian, and not just Christians, there's a certain brand of person out there who thinks that the only way to say a true thing is to be a dick. And I will not use a politically correct term to soothe someone's feelings or to make my words go over better without getting your back hairs up. No, I'm just going to be a dick. And it's not an either or kind of thing.
facts don't care about your feelings. That's my best Ben Shapiro
Yeah.
impersonation. And I think he's like responsible for this uh political unrest in some way, maybe not significantly, but in a big way, because the level of discourse has gone that you can say something that is true, but you have to say it in a certain obnoxious and combative way. And it doesn't really solve the problem. It just makes people angry.
Right. And
So,
there's also there's also the fact that you have to ease people into some truths, okay? Because you have to see where they are. You have to recognize where they are, what they grew up in, what they understand as uh, reality, and you want to tell them something that's radically different from that. You don't start off, that doesn't mean you have to compromise your message, but you don't start off by saying, you fool. Uh, you know, um,
well,
that's simply, you're never going to convey your truth that way.
your truth. Yeah, yeah. Not that I think there's something like I think there's just the truth, like especially with big picture things, but also with subjective things. There obviously people have mini truths, but like I feel like I can agree with you and say like, yeah, it's not always like you have to be like telling people like riding on a white horse and telling people like, hey, I have the truth over here and you're down there like a peasant. And you just don't like that I have this brilliant white horse. So
Yeah.
that's your problem.
I think
Uh,
Paul's message to the Athenians, the unknown God sermon, I thought that was a good example of political correctness, using political correctness to deliver a truth.
it's a good
So,
sermon. Yeah, it was a good sermon.
yeah,
Uh,
I would say that I would agree that that's a good sermon. And if he had done a YouTube video, we'd be taking it down right down.
no,
But
it would be a good sermon to analyze for a
there's
future
some Paul
show.
cosplayers out there, and so I wonder. I mean, I knew a guy who used to. His thing was he memorized, certain books of Paul's letters, and he would do dramatic presentations, kind of one man plays at churches where he just kind of went through, uh, the letters, some of Paul's letters. So I wonder if there's anyone out there doing Paul's sermons because that would be interesting. I'd love to do
Well,
one
you
of those
can't
on the
even
show.
preach that sermon today because there's no Zeus worshippers or people
Mm,
who read poetry from Greek poets who don't even like no one. It just doesn't. You can't preach that exact same sermon to a group of people. You may be able to like use principles from it, but you can't like say you can lift it word for word and be like some of your poets have said this and this and this.
mm.
Uh
I
yeah.
think that we could get into the cosplay of it. I could cosplay an Athenian pushing back on Paul's sermon. For-
Well, they did push back. Like it's not like people are like, yeah, everyone got saved that day. Some people did, but others, when they heard about resurrection, they were like, oh. So it was just as surprising then as it is now for some people, for a lot
right,
of people.
but it also wasn't delivered in a way that was crass or off-putting, and it was a thing that could invite discussion.
Yeah,
Uh,
they listened to him. He was at the Areopagus, so like he must have like I wonder if he had like to think about it, be like instead of like or like freestyle it, like like let me just go say what I have to say, or was he like, what am I gonna say to these white beards over here who like
po-
know Greek philosophy?
Possibly, I found myself in front of it wasn't a congressional hearing, but it was some local political thing. I was with a group of people, and we were representing him. We were a particular group, and they asked me to go and say a few words in representation. There were some open comments. I didn't go there prepared to make a comment, but I did, and I understood the audience in the room, and I understood that what we were doing, and I was also trained uh, on impromptu speech. So it was fine. I imagine that Paul would have been very much like that too. He's in a place where people can get up
Yeah, just
and
say something.
talk. And I suspect that he would have been prepared to speak whatever crowd he was in. But this idea that he didn't, at least in this place. Maybe there may be other places, but in this place, he didn't take the idea that um, it's either political correctness or truth. Um, he found ways to package truth uh, in ways that were culturally appropriate and in a way that could reach people. He was the guy who famously said, "To the Jews, I'm a Jew. To the Gentiles, I'm a Gentile. I'll be all things to all people, whatever it takes to save people." And people can take that out of context as you want. But I think it is the greatest statement from a conservative Christian of how to use political correctness to get your message across. And this guy could stand to study Paul a little bit. But he is in
Well,
a
let's
church.
let's hear what he says. Let's hear
Yeah.
like
For those who are
yeah,
just listening to this, by the way, this is a typical church. I say typical, it's actually
it's
rare.
not
It's a mega
typical for
church.
me. It's a mega church, yeah.
Right. It's a mega church. I would guess, and I'm really bad at estimating numbers, but I'd say that there's probably 1,500 to 2,000 in the room.
That looks about right. Yeah. It's that's about, but like I hear about mega churches of like 10,000 people, which is like,
Yeah,
ugh,
the
I don't
average
know.
the average church is about 70 members, um, or less.
Right. But
That's
like
the average church. So,
yeah, but like the down south, like mega churches are like a thing.
oh yeah,
And it's like stadium churches
yeah.
or like an entire hall.
And
And
you kind of have to ask yourself, how charismatic is a person who can pull together a stadium church? Uh,
it's not charismatic. It's more like he's telling people. It's one of those Johnny. What's this guy's name? One of those motivational speakers. Like it's like having one of those conferences, but you're doing it for free. So it's like why not just go to this guy? If I why should I pay to go to a conference where
yeah, but
Johnny
this is
wrote?
not a motivational conference. I don't know what this speech is,
This
but
isn't, yeah, this isn't motivational for sure, but this
he
is
managed to cobble together thousands of people to listen to him talk probably every week about bat shittery. And maybe not all of it. We will find out. We will actually get through
no,
this,
I don't
folks.
think so. I
Um,
think like maybe he got invited by someone.
so you think
That's how
this
it
is a
usually
special
works.
event?
Yeah, this guy's not the pastor of this place for sure. He's
Hmm.
just a guy who got invited. Like you saw him plugging his books. I wanted to talk about the books for a little bit, but that's okay. Uh,
Okay, look,
yeah,
we may
he got
go back
invited.
and do that
He-
for the after show.
Yeah, we're
I
all
just
yeah. Let's keep going. Let's
I
keep
just
going.
couldn't
Yeah,
be bothered with him selling his books. I'm sorry.
you like fast forwarded.
I know. All right, here
What
we
were the
go.
gods? In ancient times, the world was filled with the gods. Every nation, every culture, every land worshiped the gods. And the Bible gives us the first clue to this mystery that many believers miss. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says that those who worship the gods worship something called the Shedim in Hebrew. Shedim is the Hebrew word. It doesn't mean mythology. It means spirits, entities with consciousness, with will. In the Psalms, it says the people sacrifice their children to the Shedim. Now, when the ancient Jewish scribes translated that word into Greek, it went into the New Testament as the word daimonia. We get the word demon or demonic from it. Paul in 1 Corinthians says that the pagans are worshiping gods and idols. They're actually worshiping the daimonia, the shedim, the spirits. So beyond the gods were entities, dark entities. So the myths of man follow this. The entities play on it. Now the next piece of this mystery. If the gods represented spirits and the pagan world was given to the gods, then they were given to the spirits. They were indwelt by them. Pagan culture has all the signs of a possessed culture. It's amazing when you look at pagan culture in ancient times, you look at the high priests, the oracles, the worshipers, all had the signs of demonic possession. And so this was all over the world. So what happened? What happened to the gods? What happened to all this? Jesus happened. Messiah happened. God came into the world. He sent his word into the world. the land of the gods. Now you have the power of God. And there came a clash of civilization. And that's why Christians were thrown to the lions, ultimately because it was a spiritual war.
Okay, question. You probably are okay with that idea, but why? Jesus happened, and that's what changed because God happened before that. So how would the demon world have changed simply because Jesus came on the scene when God was there the whole time? What was Jesus doing that God wasn't doing that allowed that somehow stifled the demon world?
Well, he's talking about the incarnation. So when God became human, Jesus Christ taking on human nature. Uh, Quick note about that: it's not that he's half God, half man, but like he took on human nature, and like again, like for people who are like, oh, this is just discussing literature. Okay, let me engage your literature skills for a second. When you read the New Testament and you have Jesus showing up, the demons are able to like recognize him immediately, but Jesus has to tell them to be quiet. And the reason for that is that he does not want for people to believe in him out of fear, like be like, oh wow, that demon kind of co-signed uh, his deity. So that's why he would cast out the demon and tell him not to say anything. But the demons would recognize who he is. To answer your question, the reason that it's different is that uh, God self-identifies, like he came into this world that is already ridden with, it's a cursed world because of sin, and it's also tormented by evil spirits. And he came in and identified with it, and he cast them out. He kind of like, so here's the part where like other Calvinists, people are like, oh, you're just a Calvinist, so you don't believe that Jesus died for everyone. Well, yes, I do, because his death and resurrection accomplished what this guy is talking about, which is that the evil spirits were kept at bay. Like they're not as rampant as they used to be before that. Does that answer your question?
Well, not really, because what I'm trying to figure out is why God wouldn't want to keep them at bay before. I mean, he was God with the power of God,
Well,
and
again, that's a
so
good question that you'd have to ask God because he knows why he does things. And I got into a bit of a tiff on the boards because I was attempting to explain to someone that like God doesn't have a possibility thing. He doesn't like consider like, should I do this or should I do this? Like that's hard for humans to understand because we do that all the time. Every single thing we do in our lives, it's choosing one thing over another. But then when it comes to God, like the thing that God chooses, that's the right thing. And so like, okay, why was there demon oppression before and then it's now reduced or non-existent? Then that's because that's what God desired and that's what was right for God's purposes. Yeah,
okay,
that's it. That's the answer I can give you.
okay, and I think that's about as close to Molinism as we're going to hear you come. That's
Nope.
practically the Molinistic defeater.
I hate Molinism.
I
Um,
know.
Yeah, but like Molinism would say like God considered possibilities and he went for the best one that would ensure the most amount of people will be saved. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. That's not even in the Bible. You just came up with that. What the Bible says is that God does all things according to the counsel of his will. So if his will was for there to be a devil who tempts people, then that's his will. And if his will is to defeat that enemy, then that's also his will. Now you could say like, why even have that to begin with? Well, then the question is like, okay, um, you're not God, and so your reasons for not having a devil would be inferior by necessity to a God who is more wise, like wiser than you are. So you can't tell God that, hey, you did so. It's like a little kid telling his parents, hey, you're not supposed to do that. I would do it like this. And the parent says, well, you have a long way to go before you understand
Sure,
everything that's
I
happening.
understand your answer. I mean, your answer is Paul's answer when he says your question is invalid. That's that's basically the answer. I get that. I don't think the question is invalid though,
It's not
because
invalid question.
the fact of the matter is demons were around when God the first was around, and you could say that their power was curtailed even then, because if not, the world would have been a very different place even then. And so God is kind of holding back the demons. And what you're saying is Jesus comes and he kind of
Not kind
holds
of.
back the demons. No, because they're still at play. They're still working. They're still working here.
They are being
But
held
maybe
back
not as much.
as much as they need to be held back according to God's will. Because you know about this passage where Paul talks about his thorn in the flesh, right?
Hmm.
Are you familiar with that one?
Hmm.
And he says like a messenger of Satan was sent to torment him. And then he says he asked God to take away this messenger, and God said no. And
So
Paul
I always
says,
thought of that as metaphorical. That there wasn't some
"What a
actual
messenger of
angel.
Satan!" Those,
Yeah, it's
well, let's
messenger.
take it literally, okay?
I mean, thorn
Or
in the
let's
flesh
take
is
it
also
both.
a
Let's
metaphor, right?
well,
He didn't have a literal thorn in the flesh.
no one like he didn't have a literal sword in flesh, but like what we're talking about is that this whatever it was a messenger of Satan, and this messenger had bad intentions for Paul, and Paul prays and asks God, take this messenger of Satan away, and God says no because uh,
My grace is
my
sufficient.
yeah, my grace is sufficient in your weakness. And then Paul is like, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. I'm skipping a lot of things. Yeah, but like the point being that he's made strong by relying on God instead of relying on himself. And that messenger of Satan is tormenting Paul. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. The messenger of Satan wanted Paul to be conceited because he's this great apostle and he's like so far ahead of everyone else. But then he had that messenger had an intention of messing with Paul and making Paul sinful. But then God decides to leave that messenger there to keep Paul reliant on him so that he doesn't become conceited. And so, in a way, God, even with these evil rogue agents that are out there tormenting people, if you are a believer in Christ, even their work is helping in your sanctification, in your becoming closer to God.
Right. So, in other words, we had demons before Jesus. We have demons after Jesus, and I don't see this great change that you and this preacher seems to think that there was. Oh, we've got Jesus and everything changed. If you listen to the rest of the sermon, it doesn't sound like anything has changed.
Well, again, we might differ, me and this guy, Jonathan. But like what he means is like you don't have like some of the demoniac episodes you see in the New Testament where you have
Yeah, talk to
people.
the Catholic Church about that because they would say you
I
do.
have actually talked
Okay.
to someone about it. Uh, yeah, yeah, and I thought it was a fruitful discussion. But like the point is like you don't have like the demonic things we're talking. You're not the guy who like breaks the chains, and no one can keep him, or Mary Magdalene who had like seven demons. Like it's not to that extent where you're going out and you're seeing demonic apparitions or crazy signs like a fortune teller that Paul encounters. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move. Let's sally forth.
It was ultimately a war, but in the end, the gospel of Messiah prevailed, triumphed. The temples.
Okay, I'm sorry. So he says he's talking about the war. It's all a spiritual war, and he's now saying it was a war, but now it's over. Are we in spiritual war or not? So the war's not over, is it? So,
I mean, in one sense, it is right. If it's like like when you're playing chess with someone, and it's like, okay, 5 moves left for this person. Like the game is like it's won, but the other person can be like out of spite. They can decide to take your queen
Okay,
or take your
but that
rook.
doesn't make any sense, because if you sit
Yes, it
down,
does.
no, it
No, no,
doesn't.
think
Because
about it.
if you're no, you think about it. If you're just an average chess player and you sit down against an international master, the game is over before the first move is played. So
Right.
you're just
But
marking
like,
time at that point, until you're just counting the moves that it takes for you to get checkmated. So in that sense, it was always
yes,
over. The
but
war was
like
always
in one
over.
sense it isn't over. In another sense it isn't, right? Because you can still like take pieces off the board and
So
be like, hey,
again, when
I'm
Jesus comes
winning.
around, nothing changes. The war is over and the war is not over, just like it
And when
was
Jesus
before.
changes, it's like it's like when you're in a battle. None of us have been in a battle, but like, all right, the battle's won. It's like now you're just going around and you're collecting the spoils or something, or you're implement. Okay, let's stick with the chess example. Like you're taking the big pieces off the board. Now you're taking bishops off. You're taking knights off. It's not just pawns anymore. You're taking the big pieces, and then one day it's gonna be like checkmate for real, and that's gonna be the last final judgment day. So it's not simply like, oh, is there a war? There is a war. The war has been won, but there's still like more moves. Like we're literally in the end game now.
Okay, well,
And
it
yeah,
seems to we would use that language if we were in a situation of uncertainty. So two equally matched chess players. The game is not over before it begins, because we don't
the
know.
game.
They don't know who's going to win.
But
But
it doesn't matter if they know or don't know. The point is like objectively, if you're playing the number one chess player in the world and you're like, okay, you already in the game, for that person they could be like, oh, we're in the end game. But you're thinking, well, I'm doing pretty good here. I've already got two of his knights and
yeah,
bishops.
but if the number one player is playing the number two player and they're pretty close, you have to get the game progressed to a certain point before you can say, okay, it's over. Right?
Well, the only thing,
You wouldn't be able to say that at the beginning, and so you would
well,
only be
we're
able to
not
say
saying it
that.
at the beginning. We're
Okay,
not saying it at the
but
beginning.
in this case, you're talking about spiritual war, so devil and his demigods or whatever versus God. That is not a competition.
Right. It's not.
The war. So therefore, it would be like a grandmaster playing, say, me. The war is over before we sit down in our chairs.
But it's also that you're still playing, right? It's not like you're just like a robot,
Sure, and when he
right?
takes my queen, we're still playing.
You're still playing, right?
I could maneuver for 10, 15 more moves before he checkmates me.
Yeah, and that's what the spiritual warfare is. It's like you're like they're maneuvering, like, and that's why it's like if someone is like in rebellion against God, it's not like they're gonna checkmate God. You can't do that. It's more like you're just refusing to admit that the game is over, and you're moving pieces around.
Okay.
Or like some people like flip
Oh,
over the
look,
chessboard and say, I don't want to play anymore.
I didn't mean
I
to
win.
stop here. Um,
Okay.
it just, I see why I did. I'm glad I did, and I'm sorry. I'm going to try to, it's going to happen again.
Of Zeus became empty. The shrines of Dionysus were abandoned. It was the twilight of the gods. The gods were gone, but if behind the gods were spirits, then it wasn't just the departure of the gods, it was the greatest mass exorcism in human history. And that's why Western civilization has been so unique, because it was the one civilization that was exorcised. But spirits don't die. So what happened to them? Now the final clue to unlock this mystery comes from the parable given by Messiah. He said, if a spirit comes out of a man, it goes wandering the earth looking for a place to dwell, finds none, says, I will return to the house from which I came. So it goes back to the man and finds, it says, it finds the house swept, clean, empty. Then it says, I'm going to go back, and takes 7 other spirits, and they come back to the house or the man and repossess him. And then now the repossession is 8 times worse, so Messiah says that the latter state is worse than the first state. And now we hear this and we're thinking it's talking about a man. Well, it is, but it's more than that. Because at the end of the parable, the Lord says, so it will be with this generation. This generation, not just individuals, but entire cultures can be oppressed, can be possessed, can be under the influence, can be delivered, and can be repossessed.
Okay, so I fully acknowledge that there's no way we're going to get all this done in one show. This may be a long podcast that gets broken up into two, but I
And
can't
to,
let this.
and also we could have it like be on separate days. Like we don't have
Yeah,
to finish the video. Yeah.
yeah, I can't let this go though. I can't let this go. This parable he's talking about is one that has been stuck in my craw since I was a kid. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so the thing that doesn't make sense to me is if God is going to take the trouble to cast a demon out of you, it why not put some security there? You know, we've got the burglar out of the house, but you didn't put him in jail. You didn't do anything with him. You just took him out of the house. And so he says, okay, I'm going to bring my gang the next time. Does God say, no, you're not?
Well,
I declare this person off limits. No, I want to bring my gang. He goes in. The person is possessed sevenfold. What he was. How is that sensible? Because
well,
that didn't make sense to me as a Christian.
well, you got to look at the passage again, like the full passage, and like part of part of like why I am not a big fan of modern day preaching is because he just gave a text, he just gave a parable, and he's using it as part of his, I guess, his bigger narrative about cultures and civilizations. But the context is so important. Like you can't just take a parable and just mold it to be what you want it to be. And in that parable, Jesus is talking about like how, like if you're trying to rob a house, uh, first you have to make sure that you bind the strong person in the house, right? You're not just gonna start taking their stuff, their TV, their jewelry. If they're just the other person is sitting around, you have to make sure that they're restrained, and then you can take their stuff. Or like, yeah, and that's the context of that verse where Jesus is saying, like, pretty much, I'm here to destroy the works of the devil. I'm here to bind up the strong man so that uh, God's work would progress in the world, in the Gentile world specifically, and also the rest of to the ends of the world. And that parable about how, like, uh, a demon leaves and then comes back with his bodies and finds that the house has been swept clean. It's just warning against, complacency and, like how sometimes you can think like if I can get rid of one habit, then I'm good. Like it's a very secular way of self-improvement where it's like I don't do that vice, and then you end up being even more sinful by saying, but like perhaps I'm not saying this applies to anyone in specifically, but like a good tie-in would be the people who are not, who go out of their way to be me. Like they say, okay, we have the truth, like those political conservatives we were talking about earlier, who say, well, I can get to be a jerk. Like they've exercised one demon, so to speak, the demon of not knowing what the truth is, but then they've taken on jealousy and hatred and anger, and now they're even worse off than when they first started. And like that's the application of that parable. Uh,
Okay, I
and
can I can
and you
understand it that way, and I think that that is the only way that you say it so that it makes sense. I'm not entirely sure that's how it was intended. And if we look at the literal here, so Jesus is coming around tying up individual demons. Maybe he ties up a bunch of demons. But then if we look at the eschatology of premillennialism, he's going to let them all go. And they're going to come back to
so
Earth, and they're going to do, you know, what is it, 7 years of tribulation, and he's just going to sit back and let them have at it again. And so whatever
I'm not a
demons
pre.
he
Yeah.
binds, he's just going to release them again.
No, but like again, I shudder to talk about this because I know like for you it's like literature mostly. Um, but like you have to look at the whole like what the whole council going back to a previous show says about what's going to happen in regards. So there are demons that are fully bound up, like talked about in First Peter chapter 3, I believe, when Jesus says, like, after he rose from the dead, he went to the demons and preached to them and said, you know, like, hey, I rose from the dead. You guys are going to stay here. And the thing is that, again, it comes down to God's sovereign governance of his world, his universe, right? So these demons eventually they're in checkmate. They're gonna be checkmated. And so for them to get a free reign to do whatever, they're just being sinful, and being sinful is stupid, and
Okay, but
it puts
it's
you
that's
and
not quite addressing the thing I said though.
you're saying he's gonna
They're
let them
bound, and then
go.
he's going to let them go. He's going to open the jail of the asylum and let them have at it. And at that point, I don't even know what the point of the initial binding was in the first place.
It's like, okay, but like we do it as humans, right? We arrest people and then we let them go, or
We
we
do that
put
in
people
comic
in.
books. Okay, you go to Arkham Asylum and you open the gates because you need a bunch of
Well, we
villains
do it
for
in
Batman
real
to
life.
fight.
We like I can't tell you how many news stories I've read where some guy was supposed to be like in jail got released, and then now they're back in jail again because they once they were released, they did something. Uh, but the main point is this: like, it's not that they're they're escaping, like they're staging a prison break. And again, I'm not pre-mill, so this isn't even something that I don't know why I'm even arguing for them because I don't even
I didn't think you were.
you're the one who's binding me up now in the house and
Well,
trying to get me
I'm
to
gonna
defend.
release you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you're gonna release me eventually, right?
So
But
this
like
binding is
I
as meaningless as the one that you're saying that
yeah,
Jesus did.
I don't even know why. No, like for okay, so let me stop defending pre-mill and go back to what I believe, which is a mill. And what
Me
it
too, by the
means
way.
is this, huh?
I'm also a male. I'm a millennialist.
Well,
So,
you can be a million, a mill. I can't even say it. But it's not the most important thing. Like eschatology isn't even the most important thing, but
right,
it
I'm just
comes down
speaking
to
literature,
this,
okay? I obviously don't believe any of it, but I think
right?
that a
But like
male,
the
you
reason
know,
you don't believe any of it is because you don't understand it correctly. Um, and that's not like meant as a jab or anything.
I understand it
Uh,
enough to think that a male is probably the right interpretation of the eschatology
right. So
options.
like, let's not talk about the other ones. Or we can talk about them purely
Well, they're big.
academically.
I don't think that most of Christendom is a male. I'm not sure that that's actually a
It
majority.
historically it has been a mill until Americans ruined it for everyone with
I
the
see.
pre-mill. No, it's true.
Well, no,
All the
we've ruined a
stuff.
lot of things. I'm
Yeah,
not.
Americans ruined a lot of things. With the Mormonism, thank you, America. With the Jehovah's Witness, America. Uh, with pretty
Southern
much
Baptist,
any
thank you, America.
SBC, SBC. Um,
Ironically,
and
American Baptists haven't ruined that much.
like I found out that there are Baptists in Europe, and they're really chill. Like you would
Yeah.
love them. Um, Americans like, and I would say it's mostly because of the culture of individualism. Like even American atheists are the worst. Like I'm not gonna lie. Uh, I can listen to atheists from Europe and be like, okay, all right. But even when I was watching that video you put up of Seth Andrews, I
Mhm.
was like, I can't listen to this guy because he's just so American.
Oh, come on, he's so funny. He's you
No,
have to appreciate at the
oh
very
my
least
God.
his presentation style. He's
Like
one of the best presenters I know.
the same way you recoil when listening to American Baptist preachers. It's the same way
No, look,
I
I
recoil
like this guy.
listening.
I like this guy a
No,
lot.
but you
He's a
said he's
great
crazy.
presenter. Of course, he's
But
crazy.
you keep saying he's crazy.
Yeah,
Well, but the thing is, you can't say I like someone who's crazy.
yes, I can. I
He's
think
like
he's a great presenter. Yeah, he's absolutely nutbags.
but like he's not like okay. Well, when I was watching Seth Andrews do his thing, and I recognized him from like he's the thinking atheist guy, right? He used to do those videos.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. He
like
was a Christian
for a long time.
disc jockey
I
before
used to
that.
watch those videos. I used to watch those videos, and I was like, but that was like a lifetime ago. Uh, and I used to think his videos were really good, or they made good arguments, because I was an atheist back then. But the thing is, he falls into that trap of thinking that because he understands it this way as an American, then that's how it has to be. And
Look,
that's how
I will
also
agree with you that Americans, we tend to be a bit more combative about a lot of things, and it's not just having a strong opinion, but it's war. Everything is a battle. It's a fight. It's a all or nothing. Us or them. The good guys versus the bad guys. Cowboys. You're either a cowboy or an Indian, kind of thing. And I think that there is something embedded fairly deeply into the American
in
culture that
American culture, yeah,
uh,
about like we have no sovereign, we have no bosses. We're our own bosses, in fact. And if you try and tell me something, you better tell me something I want to hear, else you're trying to enslave me, right?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
it's
I'm not trying to be enslaved.
yeah. There's a lot of. This is why we're never going to finish this in one recording, folks. Uh, let's get back to the preacher, though, who I think is actually pretty good. But once again, when he look, there's some clunkers. I'm sorry. I've got to. We got to talk about it. So, at any rate,
I don't think he's actually crazy now that I'm listening to him,
no, he's
but
crazy. He's crazy.
he hasn't said anything that I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's crazy.
okay,
So,
all right, let's keep going.
think about the things that he said and listen to what he says, and don't wait for me to stop. If you need to stop and say something, just start saying something. And I'll
Let's just
stop it.
go.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
Now,
Yeah.
taking what he said to its most global application, we have a warning to the modern world, to the West, and to America. And the warning is this: any culture, any nation, any civilization that has known God, that's been delivered by God, cleansed by God of these things, if it should ever turn away from God, if it should ever empty itself of the Spirit, of the gospel, of the power, of the faith that cleansed it, then those spirits that were cast out of it will come back into it. The same ancient spirits, the same ancient, quote, gods will return. The Shedim, the Daimonia will come back to the house to inhabit it, to repossess it. Pagan gods will come back to a house that's been cleansed, a Judeo-Christian civilization, and they will seek to turn that culture into a pagan one. They will begin a process of paganization, and we will watch. We want to understand what's been happening to America in the last half century or so. The increasingly dark, bizarre, irrational changes that are happening in our culture. This is what's happening. We are witnessing a repossession. And remember what the Lord said: the last state will be worse than the first state. So it means if America ever turns away from God, the last state will be worse than it was in pagan culture. You see, pagan culture could produce a Nero, but a post-Christian culture produces a Hitler or an Antichrist. Now, which gods, which principalities will lead in this return? When Israel turned away from God and turned to other gods, became subject to them, there were three in particular. In the return of the gods, I call them the dark trinity. The same dark trinity of gods are what we are witnessing, or spirits in our midst. The first was called the possessor. That's what his name meant in Hebrew: possessor, the master, the Lord, the owner. In Hebrew, he was called Baal. We call him Baal. In ancient times, it was this spirit that came into the land of Israel. When Baal comes to America, this spirit is the spirit that turns a nation that once knew God into a basically pagan nation. How would it happen? We would have to have opened the door. We'd have to begin emptying ourselves of God, and that's exactly what happened. When you look at the early 60s, America and the West begins emptying itself of God, removes prayer from the school, then from the Bible, from the children, thought it was no big deal. No, it was a real big deal. Because when you take God from the children, you're taking God from the future. And the warning of Messiah, of Jesus, is that the house will not stay empty. If you take God out of the schools, something else will come into the schools.
Okay, obviously you know that
Okay.
a pause was coming at that point, and I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I just want to make a very brief point that I have made lots and lots of times. This is a hobby horse of mine, and so you all have ridden it with me at some point or other, if you've listened to the show even once. But it is, I'll summarize it this way: you can't take prayer out of school. No one has tried to take prayer out of school. It can't be done. And so the only thing that you can take out of school is a public display of forced prayer on everyone else. And you're either forcing other people to do it or you're forcing people to listen to you do it. But as far as an individual praying in school, I prayed in school every day all the time. You can't take prayer out of school. This is rhetoric to rile people up, and you have some kind of thing wrong with your religion if you think you got to pray over the intercom to preschoolers in order for God to be active in that school. And you know, if the legislature stops you from doing that, then the devil is moving in. That is really bad theology. That's
Um,
all.
well, wait, I missed that last point. You said what's bad theology?
The idea that if some legislature says you can no longer stand in front of a school, in front of a classroom, teacher, and pray to your students, pray in front of your students or lead them in a word of prayer. If you can't do that, then somehow you have removed prayer from school, and the devil's gonna move in. That is not good theology. It's not true at any level, and it's just rhetoric to rile up people who don't understand prayer.
As a Christian, I would surprisingly agree with you because not for the reasons you think, but because when people talk about implementing this day of prayer or prayer in schools, they're talking, especially in a pluralistic culture where there's like all kinds of faiths and non-faiths and Satanists and all these things and stuff. Uh, it's impossible to get what this guy Jonathan wants to happen because with the advent of other religions like Mormonism and uh, Satanism, even though it's not really new, but like it's more freely practiced, you would say. So like having prayer in public school, uh, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be okay with Satanists saying, "Hey, you have Mondays, let's have Thursdays," right?
Well, he would
So
not. He
like,
also wouldn't be okay with saying we conservative Christians have Mondays and the Muslims have Tuesdays. He wouldn't be.
right,
He wouldn't
right.
be
He
okay with
wouldn't
that either.
would not be okay with it. So that's why it's an underdeveloped argument. So like when you hear people say that, it's usually old people. um, but it's again it's not something that they've perhaps thought a lot about, and this isn't like diminishing their intelligence, but it's just saying like it's not even implementable because I went to Catholic high school and they always had prayer in the morning, right? But some kids were like, I don't even like I know we're in a Catholic, I don't want to do this. So it's like you like it's not something you can force participation in. And it's not even something you can legislate in a country like America where you've got all kinds of people. And so like to his defense, he says, like officially we took it out, so now we've invited. So I don't know if he's saying that because we took it out, now we can't go back, or he's saying that.
We didn't
Let's
take
bring
it
it back.
out. We did. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I grew up. Part of my school. I went to a school, a boarding school, you might say, on a campus. Our campus was a state school, and it had a chaplain. I mean, it had not a chaplain. We didn't actually have a chaplain. We had a chapel, though, and so I think that occasionally there was probably some service on a Sunday for kids over on a weekend. That probably existed once upon a time. I don't think it existed so much during the time I was there, but the chapel was there. And when we'd have events, there would be someone there to offer an invocation. There would be a prayer. This is also in the state of Alabama, so of course there would be. But the idea that somehow you're only protected by God if you say a prayer in the place where you want to be protected at the time that you want to be protected is just stupid. It's
Yeah.
batshittery. It's like saying, oh, well, you're not protected at the mall if you don't stand in the middle of the bra department leading a word of prayer to the women
What?
shopping for bras. Why would you do that? That would be crazy. That would be silly. If you think that God is somehow not watching you because you're going to the mall to buy a bra, first of all, you're crazy. But second of all, you can just pray in your car before you go in the mall. You can pray the whole time when you're wandering through the mall. You can do any of that. You can do it all in your head to yourself without disturbing anyone or drawing anyone into what you're doing. But nobody thinks that way. They don't think, oh, I've got to pray here in the mall. I've got to pray here in the grocery center at the meat department so I don't get bad fish. Nobody is doing that. And so when you talk about public prayer, the way it is practiced today and the way it's thought of today, it's done in two places, or at least it's trying to be done in two places. One of them is public restaurants on Sunday. The most predictable time to see someone praying in public is on a Sunday after church at a restaurant. And
Well,
somewhere somebody's going to be standing around. They're going to be holding hands on the table, and they're going to be saying a loud enough prayer, and everybody's going to be quiet and listen to them. That's just a straight fact. And it's like they could have prayed on the way. They could have prayed when they were at the church. We're going to the restaurant. We're going to pray for our food. And we're going to do. They didn't.
but,
That's just it's
but,
performance. 3 more
your,
seconds. It's performance. The second place is schools. This is where the battleground has been. And it's like, oh no, we can't. If we can't pray publicly in the classroom, then God has been taken out of the classroom, and that's the rhetoric we're going through. And I'm just trying to make the point that this is ridiculous. It is
well,
not true, even from a Christian perspective. This is not necessary. I would have given you
I'm
this
agreeing
same
with you,
speech as a
but here's the
Christian.
thing. I'm agreeing with you, but also I want to disagree with you with the restaurant thing, because I love being American. I love America, and the the thing I'm hearing in your voice right now is that okay, these people should not be praying in a restaurant, but like that's what makes the liberty in America so great. And so, like, you may think it's performance art, but it doesn't matter what you
Right,
think,
but I know it's performance art,
because
and it still doesn't
they're
matter.
it's
I get that.
still up to them.
Of course.
Like, you think, oh, okay, yeah, but like theologically, they're not doing anything wrong.
Well,
And
they're not doing anything right
the
either.
important thing though is that they're also not doing anything illegal, and they're not doing anything that is like immoral.
Well,
So like
I would challenge you there. I would say that what they're doing is a dick move. It would be the
but no,
same.
you just don't like it.
No, no,
It's not
well,
like
no. It would
it's
be
not
the
that
same thing as if
it's
you're at a
like
restaurant and Muslims stood
that
up to
that
eat,
happens.
and suddenly for 5 minutes they're standing around. That's annoying. Why would you do
But
that? It's not
that's not
necessary.
helping.
And
But
the
that's them.
restaurant,
Like,
hold
let
on, the
them do their
restaurant,
stuff.
those Christians in the restaurant would not have nearly the kind of patience for that
Okay.
nonsense
I
as
think
they expect people to have for them.
you're just juxtaposing how you feel onto other people because okay, here's another example that happens a lot in America. Sabbath elevators, right? Uh yeah. If those things go down in a building or in a hotel, then the management has to bend over backwards to make sure that you press a button so that a Jewish person does not believe that they're doing work on a Saturday. Now, that you can do that, right? Like you could be like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Like pushing a button, really? Like God is offended by that. But you do this stuff anyway because you're being a kind human being. It's like you don't let it bother you to the extent where you harbor hatred or you're like, wow,
Right.
these people
Ali
are just
Akbar your
doing
ass
this.
back in your seat and enjoy your shashika and shut the fuck up. That's what I have
That's
to say
that's
about
part
that.
of why
So
like I like even though like I consider you a moderate atheist, like that's what I consider you to be. But what I know, what I hear from other atheists who are not as moderate and are a lot younger than you are, is that uh they want all of it gone. They want it banned. They want it
yeah,
done. You
I
know, you
don't
can't
want it.
even say it.
I don't
I
want it
know
all
you
gone. I don't want it
don't want it
banned. I don't
illegal,
want any of that.
but
Okay.
some people do. Some
Right.
people do. Some people want it gone. Some people want it to be uh you can't even carry like why are you
But you
carrying
see,
that Bible
but I
around
want
with
it to
you?
be voluntary. I don't want to be forced. And part of being forced is in a captive environment. So restaurants are captive environments, but they're environments people volunteer to go into.
But people always
Schools,
like laugh around and joke
okay,
in restaurants if you're
and
like having a good time.
right, and I think there's a certain expectation of that at certain kinds of restaurants, for instance, and at other kinds of restaurants that would be inappropriate, right? And in the same way, in schools, that's a captive environment, but you don't have a choice. The kids don't have a
Yeah.
choice to not go to school. So this is a captive environment, and in captive environments, that's when I think it becomes immoral to do your religious activity in a way that force draws someone else into it. And I would argue that that's the only reason Christians want to do the prayer the way they want to do it in a school, because it is a captive environment that forces their religion into that public sphere. And so at
Well,
that
the thing
point,
is that
it's not
e-
voluntary anymore.
either way, like even if again Christianity isn't a religion that you can force people to do like Islam, it's an internal thing mainly. It's you have to do it because you want to do it or because you've been converted and want to do it because you recognize the state of things, the state of your soul, and who God is. And so, like the Christians who are pushing for it, like again, I'm agreeing with you, man. I'm saying like the ones who are pushing for it are very big on optics, and I'm not big on optics if the optics are done in hypocrisy, and neither was Jesus. So pushing for prayer in school, like I think the people who are doing it in public school, right? Because you can do it in private school all the live long day if you want. But in public school, it's like that's one of those things that, in a way, the people who are complaining about it, they became complacent in their own day. And then they're saying, like, oh, you guys messed it up. Well, no, in a sense, it's your fault. But that's neither here or there. It's the case that we can't go back to those good old days, quote unquote, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, where, you know, everyone was a Christian, allegedly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything was all great and kind, and everyone was loving Christian, and there was no such thing as Jim Crow laws, right? And there's always this revisionism cast over uh, specifically American history where it's like back in the good old days, this wasn't the case. But that's not true. Even the Bible says talking like that is false. But the point is like uh prayer in schools, Christians should not be pushing for that. That's not the hill that they should be dying on. But also, secular people should not be pushing their stuff in. It's like pushing new age stuff and saying, no, no, it's not religion when it clearly is. New ageism is a religion. Same with Buddhism and saying, oh, we're not pushing Buddhism. Yes, you are. So there can't be any double standards.
So look, I would agree with that. I don't think I still believe that the practice of yoga in America is vastly majority not religious at all. Most people have no idea where yoga comes from. They don't think about
New
it.
Age
It's
stuff.
just stretching. But to the extent that you want to import some kind of actual yogic ideas in into society or what have you, or into schools, I would definitely be against that. We're not in disagreement on that. Look, before I hit the button here, just a quick question: is "Enjoy Your Shadshuka and Shut the Fuck Up" too long of a title?
Oh, don't put that in the title, man.
Okay, all right. Well,
No,
we'll workshop it.
You take God from
no.
the children, something else will come into the children. And that's all that was needed for the spirit of the possessor. What did he do? What did this spirit do in ancient times? He drove God out of Israel's culture, out of the public square, out of the marketplace. Well, that's exactly what's been happening to America. In ancient times, the spirit of Baal caused Israel to turn away from the commandments of God, overturn them. Well, that's exactly what has happened to America, overturning God's ways one after the other. The Bible says Baal caused Israel to forget God. So the spirit of Baal returned has caused America to forget God, to forget that it ever knew God. Think of the America that was before the 1960s, where the
I said, wait,
nations
pause,
teach.
Uh-huh.
pause. I said, am I a prophet now? Because I didn't watch this video, but I could tell that he was gonna be like back in before the 60s,
Yeah, no,
as
they
if
they
as
always think
if
that's
there
when the good
wasn't
old days. Don't.
as if there wasn't like a world war that just happened.
Right. No,
Right?
look, you make
Um,
America great again by having Archie Bunkers walk around in wife beater t-shirts as they enjoy their long day of work in the coal mines. I have no idea what people are thinking. These were not the
people
glory
say,
days for anybody.
and I'm assuming that the speaker is Jewish himself. So the glory days would not have been the 40s or the 50s at all, my friend. Um, and so again, it's just part of
I don't think he's Jewish. I don't. First of
I
all,
think his last name.
there are no Jewish megachurches. Uh,
No, the speaker is Jewish.
well,
That's not his
maybe. Oh, you
church.
mean ethnically
His
speaking? Yeah,
ethnicity, yes,
yeah,
his
possible.
ethnicity, yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Because again, I think his last name, but I could be wrong. But I'm just saying, like,
Well, I
this
mean,
this
I'm David.
tendency.
I'm not Jewish. David, you can't
No,
get
his
more
last
Jewish name.
Johnson isn't a last name.
Well, but
Isn't a
David.
Jewish last name.
Well, they didn't really have last names so much. What was David's last name? It was David. He was like Oprah.
No, well, they would go by David's. So by his father
David
was
Barjesi.
Jesse. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's how they would go around.
So I got
Uh,
my middle brother. I'm the youngest. My middle brother is named Jesse. We're as Jewish as you get.
oh, you guys were going the whole Davidic route with
Yeah,
the
now my
naming.
oldest brother was named Gary, so he has two names that are not Jewish at all, but they corrected heavily on us. So we've got Jesse Benjamin, and I am David Michael. We're Jewish.
Oh, my brother's name is also Jesse. What a coincidence.
What again?
Um,
Maybe
but
it's the
but
same
it's spelled no, it's
brother.
spelled with a
Or,
Y. My
oh, okay, never mind.
it's the same. No, the last no, the same brother. Whoa. No, it's spelled not like the
I
way it
didn't think my
appears.
dad got around that much, but
Yeah, it's going up and down the towns. But back to Jonathan. Again, his point about the good old days, and the Bible does warn about this kind of speech, where it says it doesn't come from wisdom. It's in Ecclesiastes somewhere. It says, like, don't say the good old days were better, because talking like that doesn't come from wisdom, because you tend to idealize the past and be like, oh, things were so better when, and in some case you could be like, yes, some aspect of reality was better in the past, but it wasn't always the best. Like in some cases, like our friend here is speaking with a microphone in front of an audience and everything, but like there's no guarantee like 60 years ago he could have been doing the same thing. So
Probably
like
not.
yeah, so like be thankful for what God has given you today. Don't don't just be like, oh, it's like go back to the past. Like how can you make things better now instead of
Yeah.
saying let's make things great again. You
And
know,
if we were
that's
being honest, and I think that you and I would agree on this theologically, the glory days for Christians would have been during the time of first century persecution. That's when Christians were real Christians. That's
well, it was the glory days, but it was also horrific days
Oh yeah,
to
but
be a
you see, the
Christian. Yeah,
glory days are always horrific days for Christians
you're
and such.
yes.
So
But like
the
most people are
only
like, I would want to live there.
right
Like, no, would you
the
really?
only time that you have God's people in glory days would be a time which I don't even know is historically true, but when maybe the time of Moses saying, and they're worshiping in the tabernacle, or the time of David and
Elijah.
Solomon, where they're large and in charge of a thriving kingdom,
Those
and
actually weren't the best days. I would say like the days like well, Solomon, yeah, sure, in the beginning, because it's so much peace, peace, and that's like a foreshadowing
right,
of Christ. But then you have like uh the days where you have the miracles happening, uh Elijah, Moses, Jesus, apostles,
right.
and this is just well,
But
yeah.
those weren't great days for Jews by and large either, and those weren't great days for Christians. The You
Hmm.
look at the glory days of Christians, the Pentecost, and they're having their big kumbaya moment of socialism. Um,
Nope.
those were yeah, no, those were you were a little bit late on that note. I was expecting it sooner. But during that big moment there, they were also just a precursor to extreme persecution, as narrated in the book of Acts. So
Yes.
you can't go back to what you would consider glory days for Christians when things were good, what we would consider good in a secular sense.
In a normal sense anyway, like in the sense of like let's take me back to Rome in the 60s, like
Right.
in the
No.
actual first no, you'd be like no, you'd be like people were suffering and dying and those all these kinds of famine and but in
Right.
another sense it is the glory days because that's when you have uh the you have Christ there, you have the apostles there, and you're like yes, so it always feels like it always comes with its own uh I guess
Yeah, but you
downside,
got
if that's
Christ
the
on a
right word.
cross. You got apostles being persecuted to death. I mean, it was the glory days for Nero. Um,
But the
so,
Christians like were also not like they weren't like uh pessimistic, which is something that's kind of been lost, I would say, in the current generation of American Christians. And I'm picking on American Christians because that's the context I'm in. So let
yes,
me do that. Um, but the thing is, like, it seems almost in a very comical way that Christians in America, like they want persecution, but also they don't want it.
right,
So it's like we want you to persecute us, but hey, hold on, hold on, hold on, not like that. It's
right,
like don't persecute us in that specific way.
right.
And it's like, first
Persecution.
of all, yeah,
It's like, okay, I'm at work, I'm getting a promotion, but I'm only getting 200,000 a year instead of 225,000 a year. Persecution.
persecution, yeah, and it makes the other Christians in the other parts of the world who are actually suffering
Right,
feel like, what are you talking about?
right.
Like in Nigeria, like churches are getting burnt down pretty much every day.
Yeah, that's a bad situation.
Yeah,
For Christians, but just humanitarian wise, bad situation,
yeah,
bad
in
deal.
general. And it's like it feels like some people in America are like, we want that. And it's like, no, you really shouldn't. You should be leveraging the peaceful time you have to do God's work. You should be preaching the gospel. You should be kind to your neighbors, loving them. You should be, just trying to bridge gaps as much as you can. You shouldn't be trying to antagonize the people that you want to become your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. You shouldn't be uh, just, just being like, I want to get persecuted too.
Okay,
But
so
yeah, yeah.
the big hand is on 8. I am not going to stop this no matter what he says until it gets to 9.
Okay.
let's
And then
let's
and
see
then
if
we
we
can
can.
summarize. We don't want people
Yeah,
also to get to see like 3 hours and be like, I don't want to listen.
that
Yeah.
actually, that doesn't happen.
Okay, I'll hold my tongue. I'll hold
People
my
tend
tongue.
to love the longer shows. I don't love the longer shows, but so yeah, let's see if we can go 5 minutes without a comment. Here we go.
Led the children in the Lord's Prayer all across America. That America we can barely remember. And that America could not have imagined this America. What has happened? It is a phenomenon of paganization. What came in as a new morality was actually a pagan morality. The spirit of this possessor is actually behind all sorts of things that we don't even think about. It's behind wokeism. You see, when there's one God, there's one truth. But in paganism, there are many gods, so there are many truths. That's why our culture has been taken over by this spirit that says there's no real truth. Everybody has their own authentic truth. If a man says he's not a man, he's a cat, well, then that's his authentic truth. There's one sign of Baal above all others in ancient times. You know what it was? It was a sign of a bull, specifically a molten bronze bull. Could that sign appear in America? Well, it already has. Come to New York City, not far from ground zero where the
God damn, you are such a stupid fool. God, anyway, sorry.
harbingers are. You'll see an image, a massive bronze molten bull, the ancient sign in the Bible of the possessor or of a nation that once knew God and turned away. They had no idea, but they did it. Now, there was another sign of Baal that actually manifested in New York City where they actually erected it. I was there to film it, to witness it, where they actually erected an object of Baal and it had a ceremony around it. But this is a real thing. Now, when you look back at the Bible, you see that that Baal is always mentioned first among the gods. And then the next thing, there's another one that's often number 2, and that is a she. And that is the next of the dark trinity. It's a goddess, and she was called, in the book, she's called the enchantress. It says Baal and this one, Ashtoreth in the Bible.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, I'll try it the
Didn't
next
even
time.
make 2 minutes.
I
That was like,
no. I'm so, come on, man. Okay,
gotta
so
have
you're a New
self-control.
Yorker. I
Yes,
worked there
I
long
am.
enough to call myself a New Yorker. Once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker. I've
Yeah.
seen the bull many times. All
And
right.
the girl. You seen the girl too?
No,
The
I
little,
did.
what?
No, what?
Oh,
I
I
don't.
guess they took her up. They put her in sometimes.
Okay,
The
I
little
don't.
girl.
Maybe.
There's a,
I think. Oh, yeah, I think so.
the
There's so
defiant
many of
little
those little
girl.
statues.
Yeah, she's always like standing with her hands on her hips and she's like looking at the bull. And
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
it's a cool visual.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
This is such bad theology. This is such bad hermeneutics. This is just such bad because he's not speaking metaphorically. He's speaking quite literally, and he has declared that, because we call, a good market a bull market, and we represent that by a bull, that this is open and blatant worship of Baal. What
Yeah,
the actual fuck?
it's not good theology. He's again like the key to all this is to look back at the beginning of the video and he has his books there. And um and again, it's like someone can be sincere, but they can be sincerely wrong. And in this case, he's just seeing dots that are not there. He's connecting dots that are not there. Like the people who put that bull in New York, they were like, "This is a cool bull. Like, let's just put it in here."
It's quite
I don't
cool. And if you go to New York, go to Wall Street,
go
look
to Wall
around. It's
Street.
very nice.
People
It's.
like always take selfies by that thing for some reason. All
I
kinds of
think I
weird
have one.
pictures.
I think I probably have one.
I've never taken a picture there.
Yeah,
Um,
it makes you manlier when you do. Yeah.
but for me, like when I was there the last time I saw, I really liked how they put the pic. I don't know. I think maybe it was like a feminist thing that was going on. I'm not sure. But they put like a statue of a little girl there, and she was like looking at the bull, and it was like this visual of like defiance against, I don't know. I
Look,
was like, I guess
I
I was
love
like,
all of
oh,
that stuff. It's
I was
look,
like, yeah, look, that's art over
it
there.
is art. That's all it is. I can tell you, artists aren't thinking this deeply about this
But
crap.
yeah, contemporary artists don't think about like putting Baal,
They are
at
not
least
zero.
not consciously.
No,
Or
look, even in New York, I'm just gonna say it.
yeah, even in a
Zero
city that
people
is
in New
as
York are worshiping
evil
Baal.
and wicked and defiled as New York City,
They are
and,
not. They are
and I
not
live
worshiping
here.
Baal. So
Yeah, like
this is just
it's
so
the most evil place, but like it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. But the thing is, like, you have to be cognizant not to like juxtapose your personal, I guess, devotions when you're reading the Bible, and then you're trying to find an equivalent, like trying to like using the Bible as a decoder ring for stuff that you see in New York. So like when Moses was writing down about Baal, he wasn't thinking like someday people in New York are gonna put a statue of a
yeah,
bull or a
Baal's
cow.
coming back. He's coming back, baby. Um, Look, my favorite thing
Yeah.
about New York, no one asked me this question, is the fact. In fact, it was one of the first things I noticed the first time I visited New York. You can be on Fifth Avenue, and you are in the middle of stores where you walk in, you can't walk out with an item legally without spending $5,000, and then two doors down is McDonald's. You got you got $1 per slice pizza in the same area,
Like a
Times
shack.
Square, as the nicest place you can find. I love that about McDonald's. I love that about New York. The person in the business suit on his way into the stock market has to step over three homeless people to get there,
Oh
and
yeah, it's like it's
so
such a indictment on humanity.
it is truly an indictment on humanity, but it's also a
Um,
great thing because you can be rich and you can be poor, and you're
and,
walking down the street there's business to do, whether
and stuff
you're
to do.
extremely rich or whether you're extremely poor, and you're
And
rubbing
also you have
shoulders together.
the folks that are always like, scavenging for the bottles. I don't know if you've seen them.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Because
yeah.
you get a lot of money actually by doing that. And then you have people in their suits, and it's like you go there, it's individual central. Everyone is doing their own thing. And driving in New York is like it's a different experience
Oh,
than
well, it's
driving
stupid.
anywhere
Why would you
else.
drive in New York?
Yeah,
There's
but
too
like
much traffic. Nobody drives there.
uh, uh,
Just
the taxi, the Uber drivers, the taxi drivers,
I think you mean
everyone's in
the
it.
taxi drivers, the gangsters,
Everyone's in it for themselves. Like that's like it's
the
perfect. It's we're in
mobsters.
it. Everyone is like we're an island. Like Manhattan is an island, and every man in it is an island, man and woman, an island. Like it's like
But they're an
I don't think you
island
can
that
even ask
somehow
someone for directions.
they. Oh yes, you can. Look, New
Yeah.
Yorkers are very proud and they're very nice and polite. I've actually very seldom run into a rude New Yorker. Um,
Ooh,
the only truly bad experience in Manhattan I had was when God threw a van at me. All right, I didn't appreciate that too much.
oh.
Otherwise, love the city.
Yeah, and it's because again, like the drivers, the again, I'm not saying the people are like awful. It's just the vibe of the place puts you
Everybody's got business to do.
yeah, you got if you're
They're
there, you
hustling.
got stuff to do. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
there, you're not there for like unless you're a tourist, and the tourists end up annoying everyone because people are trying to get stuff done, and you're just there taking pictures of buildings,
Right.
and it's like, can you walk faster? Or they're walking on the wrong side. Um, but again, back to the video and Jonathan. I again, like I sort of grew up in this sort of tradition where you talk about things that are being done in present day, and you draw connections from the Bible. And again, it's just not good theology. Like you end up publishing books every week almost, because that's your hermeneutics, and it's not helpful for you personally, and it's not helpful for other people because um, your priority should be preaching the gospel. And yeah, you can call out evil, right? You can call out evil in the culture. You can call out wickedness in the culture, but there's a better way to do it that doesn't involve misusing the Bible.
Right, because
Yeah,
this makes it harder for Christians. It makes it easier for people like me to say, "Oh, I see, you're crazy. I'll be on my
he's
way
not
now."
crazy. Be nice to him. He's not crazy.
I have been nice to him. He's a great speaker. He's good at what he does. He's still nut jobs.
He's not crazy. He's just like, can't you believe someone can be misled or
Yeah,
just
I
not
do, I
know, like,
do.
but you
I
wouldn't say that person is crazy.
okay, I might be a dick, but he's also crazy. Um, so I don't. I look. I will. I'm trying, and most of the time, It's easy. It's fairly easy for me to say that person is probably misguided. I try not to think the worst of people, and most of the time, I don't think that Christians like this are crazy. I think they're charlatans. I think they're perfectly sane. They know exactly what they're doing. And what this guy is doing is he's selling books to people who are gullible.
Just
Uh,
like Seth Andrews. Yeah,
so,
had
nope.
to get that in.
Seth Andrews is such a good. He's so good. I've read all his books. They're
But
great.
he's yeah. There we go. It worked on you then. He's like he's also doing the same thing, right? Like,
but
if you
but
look at it from a purely, like,
no, he's
say
not
you
doing the
take
same
your,
thing. Seth
yes, he
Andrews
is.
does not believe that the Wall Street Bull is Baal.
No, he does not. But like, here's the thing: he sells books that say Christians are idiots. They talk like idiots, and so you should buy this book so that you don't want to be an idiot, do you? So buy this book.
Yeah, I don't think you listen to Seth Andrews very well. He's actually
I used to listen to him. Maybe he's changed.
he's very respectful to Christians,
No,
and
he's
he's
not.
yes, he is.
He
He's one of
really
the
isn't.
more respectful people to Christians I think is
American
out there.
atheists are not respectful at all.
He's
Like, I can't
way
see.
more respectful than I
No,
am,
no, no,
and I am very respectful. Here, let's
no.
do a
He's not.
let's see if we could do another 30 minutes
Okay,
of
let's
this.
do it.
I
Okay,
do,
let's
let's see what happens. We're not going to do 30 minutes in a row of
5 minutes,
listening to this
no
guy.
talking.
All right, it's kind of past the 10. When it gets kind of past the 11, we'll stop. I,
Okay.
I will walk out of the room if I have to.
Well, I'm gonna go get something to drink. So if you want to stop it,
Uh,
um,
sure. How long will it take you to get something to drink? Because I'll just
like
vamp
less
while you're
than
gone.
4 minutes. But like, I'll have the phone with me. I just won't be saying anything.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so
So
yeah,
you'll be able to hear. Okay,
I'll be
great,
able to hear it. Yes.
great. Then I will not say
All right.
anything until you get back and I hear you, clearing your throat or something.
Clear my throat. Okay, cool. All right. See you soon.
This concludes part 1. Part 2 will be released later this week.